Starting in a minute. Okay, and we're live.
Here we are.
We're on the Musical Minds podcast, and this is Eric, and then
This is Jake.
the other man is Jake. Yeah.
Episode,
Just so you can get a episode 2.
episode 2, exactly.
And so off air, we were talking about how we wanted to talk about caffeine and its role in just music playing, and how it's affected playing, and the positives, the negatives, and try and have an unbiased discussion, I guess, about caffeine.
Sure. So Eric, I think you should start this one. This is on your mind this week.
Yeah. So in the past year, especially, I've noticed that like I've been the most anxious that I probably ever have been in my entire life, and this was in the second year of like my piano pursuits and playing, and as like recitals were coming up, I like kind of turned a little bit batshit crazy and just searching for why this had an impact on my psyche or my mood. And
Was it that you were nervous to play in front of people?
Yeah, that was definitely a part of it. But I had a suspicion that caffeine might have a role in me not being able to as effectively cope with my stress. And definitely my caffeine consumption slowly like increased over the course of the year.
What was it like at its peak? Well, how much coffee were you drinking at its peak?
Well, so granted, I am a lightweight when it comes to caffeine. So, I mean, the worst it was like a medium strength cup of coffee in the morning, and then a medium strength cup of coffee in the like afternoon, maybe like 2 p.m. or so, which doesn't sound like a lot. But I'm also super sensitive to caffeine. Actually, I don't know if you know this, Jake, but there's this company 23andMe, and they do like these genetic testing. They can test for genetic polymorphisms, and so they give you like an output, and they tell you that you might be a slow metabolizer of caffeine or a fast metabolizer of caffeine. Do you know about this?
No, I've never heard of this company. It sounds great.
Okay, so yeah, and so I'm a slow metabolizer of caffeine, and so that means that I'm much more sensitive to larger doses of caffeine. It might take me 9 to 12 hours to clear out half of the caffeine that I consume, whereas a fast metabolizer might be able to do that in 3 hours. And it all depends on like your stress load, your like chemical stress load in your liver, and life stress, and your genetics as well.
Can that change, or is that what you got?
Your ability to detoxify caffeine can change, but the genetics of it's the P450 liver enzymes, and the genetics won't change, but your chemical stress load. So your liver is what processes all of these like chemicals that are in our environment and helps excrete them. And so if you're under a lot of chemical stress load, like inhaling like a lot of fumes or something, or you're in a more like sterile environment, then you're going to have different abilities to detoxify caffeine. And what your life situation is at the time is going to affect your ability to detoxify caffeine, or just your sensitivity to caffeine.
Sure.
And so, yeah, so I'm just really sensitive to caffeine, and so I wanted to really try and commit myself to abstaining from caffeine for a period. And at this point, it's been maybe like 2.5 weeks or so, I guess, since
Okay.
I've had or chocolate or tea.
And this
or
is like an experiment to see how you
Yeah,
feel.
yeah.
In the wake of your recital, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
At this, just because one of the biggest reasons actually that I was like particularly interested in this is like I had such a passion for music, and I had been feeling after my recital of feeling a total lack of motivation to practice, and just like a missing passion for music, and just kind of feeling indifferent to it, which kind of scared me a little bit. Um, and that just felt really like not like me. Um, and so I wanted to see if caffeine plays a role in mood and motivation and anxiety specifically. That
Mm.
for me, that's what I was particularly interested in. So I bought this book, The Caffeine Blues. Um, I just typed in caffeine book, like on Amazon or something, and this popped up, like published in like '98 or whatever by this clinical nutritionist. And so I read it when I was on my meditation retreat, and I kind of said to myself that I wanted to bias myself. Um, and so I went the whole retreat without having caffeine, and then I was reading the book as well, and formulating in my mind some critical concepts for musicians that I thought would be important. Before we go into the science, what is your normal caffeine consumption look like, and what's your anecdotal experience of how caffeine affects your music or your mind state?
Sure. I mean, I generally haven't been a huge coffee drinker in my life, especially like during our undergraduate studies. I didn't really drink that much. I think as soon as I feel a little bit stacked with stuff to do, I start to drink a lot more. So I think in the last 2 or 3 months before I started graduate school, I was working for my dad doing construction stuff and getting up super early every day. And so I like needed something to kickstart, and I didn't feel any negative effects in that way. But since I've been at school, I think I generally will drink a cup in the morning and then a cup at 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And generally for me, it motivates me to go practice after all my classes are done. And it enhances my focus a little bit. I'll be able to get more stuff done and stay a little bit later than I would normally. And it would be good. It would be good practice. It won't be just like tired practice, mentally tired practice. But I will say that I'm really incapable of performing when I have caffeine. Absolutely incapable, because the adrenaline that's going is enough to give you bow shake, and then if you add caffeine to that, it's like an exponential explosion of nervousness, and it's kind of a disaster. So I stay away from it when I have days that I need to play. Like today, I won't drink any coffee because I have to play a concert later.
Yeah. So that actually, there's a study in the book that has that kind of same message. There's a lot of these studies that claim that coffee doesn't have an effect on like increased heart rate or blood pressure. But it's because these individuals are taking caffeine, and then they're just sitting in a lab without any sort of like real life stress
40
going on.
people looking at you playing your thing,
Right. And so one of the things he talks about in the book is like basically that caffeine just lightens the trigger to make you go off on either an irritable tangent or an unreasonable reaction to a certain thing. And so I'm glad that kind of that you have that realization that you can't, like, you can get some solid practice in, and it does enhance your focus. Um, but when the added stress of like having to play in front of other people happens, like it's just not a very good mix for you.
Yeah,
Right.
personally, I mean, and it's true that I know people that are able to play to perform while drinking lots of coffee.
Yeah.
And so I'd imagine there's an element of being comfortable in a performance setting that has to do with how much anxiety you feel when you're up there, you know. And
Yeah,
then that'll
definitely.
play into how much caffeine affects how you feel when you're there.
Yeah.
So
Do
like
you,
this week I was performing in a master class for the first time in a long time. I really had thought about it. I haven't performed for people like in that setting and for about a year, you know.
mm-hmm.
So you know, I was super nervous. I got bow shake even. uh, and then I went into the practice room later and tried to fix because it means there's a lot of tension you're playing, you know. But even so, like
Yeah.
it's for me a question of being absolutely not comfortable in that setting right now. And I think all it takes is you know, doing it several times, and then you can improve on the way you feel, how you perform.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Something that he talks about in the book that relates to several things that you talk about is like um, he actually links to a study that caffeine does contribute to hand tremors,
Hmm.
um, which obviously is not good if you are a musician using your hands. Um, and then also, this kind of ties in, is its effect on GABA metabolism, and how it suppresses the synthesis of GABA. Do you know what GABA is by chance?
Remind me, it's been many years since I took that
So
class.
it's gamma aminobutyric acid, and it basically is a calming neurotransmitter. It calms you down, and so it, in the long term, will suppress your GABA production. But then also, um, you talked about muscular tension. You had to
Mhm.
like go. So one of the things that was really interesting in the book to me was, so you might have heard that caffeine and coffee, they're diuretics, and they like dehydrate the body or create increased urinary excretion, and they also um, leach out calcium and magnesium
Hmm.
and sodium and potassium. Um, so all of these salts, and your muscles operate when like to contract and contract and relax your muscles, requires the calcium channels of your muscular system, and the calcium sodium, I think, or sodium potassium channels of your muscles. And so it can create this like muscular tension, um, because it's disrupting those patterns. And and but I should preface all of this. I should have prefaced this all is like you can have like a bunch of scientific data and science studies that say something that you want to hear, but it doesn't really matter unless like you have an anecdotal experience to kind of um, give to give to this observed phenomena.
Sure.
Otherwise, it's just like the philosophologist sitting in his armchair without having actually like experienced um, like the real world.
I
And
mean, it goes both ways, probably. You need both of those things to back up your claim.
yeah, Yeah, exactly.
Anecdote and evidence. Yeah.
But I think it's just so common that people don't give validity to anecdote, um, or it's discounted in some sense, especially in our society. I think it's more attributable to give to science, and then you're legitimate, and can be uncontested.
That's not without reason, though. I think it makes sense.
Yeah,
That's the case.
yeah.
When a lot of people have the same anecdote,
Yeah.
that's probably given credence over one person saying that they've done a thing or have experienced a thing.
Yeah. There's this one of my doctors. He actually gave a beautiful kind of overarching way that you can view this mixture of science and anecdote. He calls it like, or I think he uses like a triangle. So it's anecdotal evidence versus science versus historical evidence. So how often has in the past have people been affected by this issue or dealt with this issue and their observed phenomena? So you kind of have to layer in all three of those evidences, because you like even though like, for example, a historical evidence of like some like witchcraft doctor like back in like times is giving medicines that make no sense or even harm people, but they were doing it for a long time. Doesn't make it right, but
we wouldn't say like, okay.
Yeah, they didn't have the science background. Something I wanted to ask you about is like how much you buy into like state dependent learning, because you said that you practice on caffeine but you don't perform on caffeine. So does that affect you, or
well, it remains to be seen, because I haven't performed a lot recently. I will be in the next few weeks. But I mean, just intuitively, I don't think it matters as much, because it seems to me that caffeine is a pretty subtle drug, at least in the way that we take it, as in like a cup of coffee, even if it's even if it's a strong one. So I think like I'm already practicing so much anyway that helps me get over the hump of being tired in the first half an hour of practicing, you know? And so then when I'm in the rest of my session, I don't think that it will matter as much ultimately. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it gives you a feeling that you have greater stamina.
And it's also like, it could be a mental thing too. It's not like I'm going into the practice room being like, I can't practice without caffeine, or like there's no mantra being like, I can't play if I don't have coffee. Because that might fuck you up too. Sorry. You know.
No, we have the explicit tag.
Okay, that's good.
I said shit at the beginning of the episode, so
I know.
Not editing that out.
Okay, thank God. Say what you feel.
Yeah.
So I think like if you're building something up, you know, mentally, like it'll mean something different. But for me, I don't really think about that.
Yeah. I think I'm just such a sensitive snowflake that like every little thing just adds up, and
like what do you mean, while you're practicing to performance, like that sort of thing?
At least,
or in the moment.
I'd say when I'm practicing, a lot of the times I've drank a cup of coffee. Obviously, like the playing and sound is enjoyable to experience. I think I'm more productive than I actually am being, just because I'm enjoying it more.
That's a really good point. I'm probably doing that too.
because I'm riding the high of like all the neurotransmitters just getting dumped into the brain, and
Mm.
um,
I don't know
and
though. I'll disagree with you a little bit because I think when I'm doing caffeine stuff, like I go immediately to like really nitpicky practice stuff. I don't generally play.
mm,
Like because I have caffeine, I feel that I have the attention span to do that stuff, that work. Whereas
yeah,
before I probably didn't.
yeah, I just definitely find myself more distractible, uh, and getting more in that, like, as I'm like sipping on my coffee in the morning, say, uh, I'm more likely to just play for fun,
Mm,
because it's pleasurable, to play stuff and experience sound as you're like getting more energy or whatever.
mm.
But I'm not saying that it happens for everybody, but and then also the other thing that I've experienced is like, um, I get this feeling that there's not enough time in the day, or as I'm practicing, it's like I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. I need to do this faster. And um, when I try and rush through a musical passage that I'm trying to learn, or a song, having that sense of urgency, I think, or not, it's not even urgency. It's more just like,
Panic.
uh, yeah, definitely panic. I feel like I learn slower, because I'm not going in depth to every individual thing. I'm not going in depth to every individual thing. Um, I'm just trying to like
Mm.
stay afloat, I
Yeah,
guess.
right. I've definitely experienced that too. You tend to like gloss over, one tends to gloss over the really detailed work that needs to be done in favor of getting it to tempo marking 100 now.
Yeah, yeah. Um, there's yeah, and also I notice it's harder to like be in tune with my emotional state when I'm on caffeine, or when I'm playing, and like really experience the sound in its purest form. Like resting in pure awareness, I guess, or
Mm.
as flowery language as that is. Um, I wanted to mention this, kind of like ties in, but there was a study in the book that like really raised my eyebrows, and it was talking about how these subjects were found that they had poorer auditory recognition when they were dosed with caffeine.
What?
And like I if that's true, like that's pretty scary as a musician, to like not be able to recognize sound as efficiently.
Like to what degree?
The study was they had so the patient or the person had to transcribe somebody else leaving a message or something,
Hmm.
and their accuracy was reflected as such. And I really do need to take a look at the studies that are linked in the back of the book, because he has footnotes for every single one of these studies.
Mm.
Granted, this is written in '98, so other things could have come out, but it is something to explore for yourself. Like if you find that like it's harder to get to that depth of like just really hearing the sound and its pure awareness, and really feeling what that feels like. Um, but I think from a cerebral perspective, it definitely can um, give you help, or help you recognize, oh yeah, like I know that chord, that's like a dominant seventh chord right there, and I blah 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 blah. Oh, there we go. Um, um, I think it's just a little harder for me to get in tune with the feeling side of things, or the like the body response, um, to playing when I'm stimulated like that. Does that make sense?
So your body awareness goes down, you're saying, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think I like my attention slowly like creeps up my head.
So that all
uh,
of a sudden you're playing for an idea, not just what you're actually making. Is that what you're saying?
I think, yeah, I think so. I
Okay.
definitely like start to go more cerebral.
Hmm.
Um,
I find that's a trap to fall into anyway, is to play to an idea you have in your head and not actually work on
yeah.
what you're producing with your body. Like I find
Mhm.
that if you focus on the latter, it makes it way easier to improve how you're playing, right? The idea is probably necessary if you have it in your head, but
Mhm.
it's not going to be at the end of the day what will help you.
Mhm. Yeah. I don't want this to go unsaid, but I have had some like really fantastic practice sessions with chocolate. They're just kind of like there's this one practice session that I can think of in preparation for my recital in December, and I had just enough like stimulation that like I was just really fine with all the details that I was trying to work out. And like even today, I can recognize that practice session, that 1 hour, as being like amazing. Um,
Chocolate, huh? How did you
yeah,
why did you decide to do that? Was it a deliberate thing?
um, yeah,
You're like, today I'm going
yeah.
to practice and eat chocolate to reward myself.
Um, well, yeah. I mean, chocolate has very similar stimulant compounds to coffee.
Mm.
Has similar stimulant properties. It has theobromide, but it also does have some caffeine in it as well. Um, but yeah, it was like kind of later at night, so I didn't want to drink coffee, but I still could eat a little bit of chocolate.
Mm. I find that I can still
Yeah.
sleep even if I drink coffee pretty late.
Mm.
I think it's just like if you are choosing to stay up, it helps.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, he does talk about he believes like its effect on the ability to get quality sleep and entering like stage 4 sleep, which is
Uh,
like the most restful. Um, and so obviously insomnia is pretty common with coffee. I don't think that's disputed. It's harder to tell though if the quality actually changes.
hmm.
Um,
I guess I
um,
would believe it if someone told me that.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's again just something that I think you have to like ask yourself. Um, I was at the point in December where I was like, I would rather die than not have my first cup of coffee in the morning. Thanks.
Right. Right.
Just because it's just like a pleasurable experience, and
I think so too.
um, and the only reason why I like considered changing my behavior is I reached a breaking point where I wanted to change something in my life and I wanted to experience something different. And so I want to tweak things to see if I can just be more in line with what I'm prioritizing to be. To me, well-being and well-being and calm are the two attributes of my personality that I want to optimize for.
Mm.
And I hope that that doesn't slow down um, my learning. I don't think it will, but I hope it doesn't. But if I can enjoy myself a little bit more along the way and maybe not go as far, I think I'll take that
Mm.
at this point. Just because last year, looking back and realizing there was a lot of discontent, um, it's just not worth it to me.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
fair. I think
yeah.
as I'm starting to be reminded a little bit, there's a lot of people that that are discontent
Yeah.
pursuing just, I think, everywhere in every field, but I know specifically in music because it's so directly, and especially in a conservatory, like you're around a ton of other people that play your instrument really, really
Mhm.
well. And you think I went in being like, I work really hard and I'm like very good at this. And I still believe that, but it's still, it's a different way to look at what you do when you see this 18-year-old freshman who can sight read better than you can, you know?
Yeah.
It's yeah, I think, and I think especially with your concert experience, like freaking out about playing for people and being generally like really, anxious about that. I think it's a common thing,
Yeah.
especially if you don't do it very often. Like you're putting yourself very much out there in ways that people who don't perform don't understand, I think.
Yeah. Hmm. Trying to think, is there anything else that we want to talk about,
Um,
or anything else that like comes to mind?
I don't think so, actually. I think we've exhausted this one for now.
Okay. Um, uh, could we just briefly? So you went over your you had your performance this week. Could you briefly just um, when I called you for my recital, um, and I was really stressed out, you kind of provided these words of wisdom that were handed off to you by your teacher of like just slowing down. I can't
Mm,
remember exactly what you did, but like with you having just the fresh mindset of just going through that wave of anxiety,
mm.
like was there anything that you did to like kind of slow yourself down and get a little bit more centered?
Um, I think it was generally trying to not let my mind run away on me because, the day before I was thinking about all these it's chamber music, it's not exactly solo stuff. So I'm covered for the most part. It's about
Hmm.
making a piece of music with other people, but still like there are very exposed parts that I have. And the day before I was like, I don't even know this fingering and I'm probably going to play it totally out of tune and it'll be very embarrassing and all of the violists will be there and they'll laugh at me. And I was just like, I answered myself and I was like, no, I practiced that. I know that. I play it in tune. It will be fine. Like it was like a lot of talking down a little bit, talking myself down. And
So
especially,
at
sorry.
some point, you just gotta like have faith in yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a tendency to like over dramatize the thing. Like, and especially
Mhm.
if, like, I know that you work hard and I work hard. So, like, the work is there always for the most part. And, like, that is important because that's what makes it work.
Mhm.
Then there's, like, on top of that, there's all this bullshit negative talk that you need to deal with, which we're both still figuring out how to do. But I think that's an important part. Like, that's the next step is, like, mentally being okay with playing. So that's why, like, since I haven't done it in so long, it was really nerve-wracking because I don't remember how to handle it. And it
Mhm.
really is no substitute for just going out and doing it, which is why, like, after that performance, I was thinking about it and reflecting a little bit. And it went okay. We almost fell apart once. We're playing the Brahms clarinet quintet, and it's like really, really thick, and there's always like polyrhythms going on, like 3 against 2 stuff, always.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's really difficult to get together. But we got to the end, and it was okay. But as I was reflecting on it afterwards, I was just thinking like, grad school is only 2 years, and it's really important to be able to play for as many people as often as possible,
Mhm.
even if it's not just your teacher and not just in studio class, although those are 2 places you can play.
Mhm.
Just like being prepared to perform the things that you're working on at all times, I think is really healthy. And
Mhm.
that's what I'd like. That's what I'm going to try to work on in the next like couple weeks, is to try to just be always ready to play for people. And then I think you don't get as much in your head, as like that's my hypothesis at least. is like you're not going to be freaking out about every single piece you play because you play so many pieces. And it's really just about like being calm before you do it because you know that you can perform. That's my idea, at least.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I do a lot of recordings of myself, and just knowing that a microphone's aimed my way, it creates a very similar stressor. One of my teachers recommended that I like record myself every day, just to get used to being listened to and having to like be accountable for every note that I play, but then also to listen to myself and be more objectively known like. Sometimes it's hard to like actually know what you sound like while performing.
Yeah, right. That's probably one less thing you have to think about ultimately is how you sound.
Yeah.
Right. That's a really good
Yeah.
idea, though. I think I mean, we could probably do an episode on recording yourself, I would imagine.
Yeah,
That's a good.
I think so. I think so too.
There's a lot there. Yeah.
Well, you want to wrap up?
Let's do it. All right. Until next time.
Okay.
All right.
Peace out.